Good afternoon, everyone listening to Cross Border Talks. This is another issue of our podcast, our regular video program, in which we are going to discuss the ongoing political crisis in Bulgaria. Today, I am not joined by an external guest, but I will ask questions about Bulgaria, Bulgarian politics, Bulgarian society to my friend, colleague, and co founder of Cross Border Talks project, Vladimir Mitev. And my name is Malgorzata Kulbaczewska-FIgat. I am connecting with you from Katowice, Poland. And at this moment, I remind you that Cross Border Talks is available on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, all the main social platforms. So, not to lose any of our episodes, just subscribe there and comment on what you have heard and seen. So, Vladimir, hello. Hello, thank you for agreeing to record this extraordinary interview.
Thanks for invitation. So I'm yours.
Yes. So, as we now see, Bulgarians will be voting again this autumn. Theoretically, the Bulgarian president Rumen Radev is going to hand over the mandate to form a government to the second political force in the Bulgarian parliament on Monday, July 22. But to everybody observing Bulgarian politics, it is clear now that we continue the change democratic Bulgaria. So the coalition that will get the chance to form a government will renounce this opportunity without making any attempt of forming a government. This means that the chances of forming a government without early elections will be only the third mandate that the president can give to any political force. But really, nobody expects that this third attempt would be successful neither. Bulgaria is entering a crisis or has entered some time ago a crisis which is incomparable to anything happening in any other political country. We have many polarized countries in the European Union, but what is going on in Bulgaria reached the level of total impossibility, not only of having some coherent vision of politics, both internal and external, of the country, but even on agreeing who could head and government administration who could rule and steer the state even for a short period. Vladimir, I would like to ask you how it happened. How did Bulgaria came to this moment?
It's a big question, and maybe it requires also a longer answer. Yeah, in short, I need to say that Bulgaria had for a long time a stabilocratic type of government. Maybe you know this term by Furin Bieber, stabilocracy, which is characteristical for the Balkans during Merkel era. So Boyko Borisov was the long-serving prime minister of Bulgaria, and in 2020 there were huge protests against him and against the chief prosecutor at that time, Ivan Geshev. Eventually, after that, some fluid time and came in Bulgarian politics with the rise of new parties. Parties appeared which are not standard parties with ideology, structure, um, even great idea behind them, but they were more like political projects. This is even the word which was used. And what happened after that maybe was very much in line also with the international situation, where there was a war in Ukraine, and the government of Joe Biden divided the world into democracies and countries which are not sharing the rule based order. And there were many levels of polarization. Maybe the polarization regarding the war in Gaza had smaller significance in Bulgarian society in the last months, because somehow our allies are traditionally with Israel in the last years. But other polarization really transferred to Bulgaria, and we saw that both internally there was contestation between different businessmen, influential businessmen, their media, their influence in state administration and prosecution, etc., also mattered. And there was also international context. So really, on many fronts, um, there was this confrontation and politicization, but at the same time, there was really certain lack of political substance in what is discussed, because parties, for example, didn't have really party life. uh, to a great extent. They were more like pools of cadres for state administration, and people were not really signing up for a party because they share certain view for society, but maybe because they want to get appointment in some local municipal office or in some other way to get some economic benefit. The answer, as I said, is huge. Maybe I'm just sharing a small piece of the reasons why this crisis appeared. But really, I have the feeling there is this crisis that, in the sense, including that we have so much mutual contestation and domination in society that um, life, simple life, normal existence is somehow challenged significantly, and we can't, something new can't grow, because to grow you need not only power but you need also connection with life.
Also, you partially answered my next question, which is namely on the relationship between the political crisis and the normal life, as you put it. Or, in other words, how do the social relations in Bulgaria influence the shape of the political life? It is said that people elect politicians, so the politicians are only the emanation of what people expect from those in power. If you want specialists, then you vote for specialists. But if you want populists or people who just make noise around themselves or those who use politics to make money, then such people win elections uh, elected by people's vote. So, my question is, what do Bulgarians expect from the political class? And do you think that the ordinary Bulgarians have been abandoned by the political class, or rather that the Bulgarians are voting for people who represent the things they want to get? You already mentioned that people in Bulgaria join parties not for an idea, but in a hope of some economical profit. So, what is the relation between this approach to politics of ordinary Bulgarians and the shape that this politics is taking?
As a continuation of what I discussed previously, I think a lot of people in Bulgaria become cynical about politics and media and public life. Um, and um, that's one reason why they may look in their relations mostly how, for ways to make money or to increase their power vis-a-vis the people they or groups they compete with. And I don't want to go into great details, but let me say that I live in uh, provincial town or city where I certainly notice that it is important which is your party, or the groups which people belong to sometimes or often are associated with certain political or economic lobbies, if I may say. So I have the feeling that people are very, very pragmatic in a surprising way, even pragmatic in a very uh, unmediated way, I would say, because you can be also pragmatic when you take into account certain values or certain theory or certain ideology, if you wish, or certain abstract thinking. But I think people are really very much thinking how they can resolve concrete problems here and now. So, for example, in many, I think in many areas in outside of Sofia, it really matters who is ruling the municipality or who has chances to win. And I have the feeling, and I have heard over the years many times the claim that um, whoever doesn't have power really doesn't matter and just offers talk. So therefore, people basically have certain encouragement to vote only for people who really can get access to power, and then this power be used in the benefit of those who have voted or who somehow touch with it or have relatives related to it. Um, so I'm not sure if I'm giving a very good answer, but maybe you get the idea that these large ideas which may be political science or Western or even international, any effect serious media promotes, are here very much reduced to something very concrete, very grounded. And I have the feeling if somebody wants to do change in Bulgaria on the basis of ideas, it is a huge challenge because everything can be very easily reduced to something very material, very concrete, very minuscule, as opposed to these grand ideas which we are all living with in European Union and we all promote.
Therefore, I need to ask, does the failure of Bulgarian politics is also a failure of Bulgarian Western allies of the European Union, whose Bulgaria is a member, or Germany and France, who in different level have engaged Bulgaria in their diplomatic activity in the southeastern Europe, or whose business has a lot of ties to business in Bulgaria? For we all know how that European Union likes speaking a lot about democracy, freedom of speech, about vibrant political life in a liberal democracy, and last but not least, rule of law. And what the picture that you draw shows really none of this. And people who are more familiar with the story of Boyko Borisov and his stabilocracy in Bulgaria would certainly agree that this was not the rule of law that European Union is suggesting as the best order for organizing political and social life. So I need to ask you, is the failure of Bulgaria also a failure of its Western partners? And the second question packed with it, where, when, and where does the failure start? Should we look for roots of the failure in the transition period or even before?
Thanks for the huge questions. Um, they're of the magnitude of greatest intellectuals to answer, and the greatest experts on Orient or Balkanism or West East periphery center relations. When you mentioned Boyko Borisov and the bureaucracy, I immediately recalled that during the protests against Borisov a few years ago, a report appeared signed by Albeda Zmanova, who is a political scientist. At that time, she was in the Kent University, and she basically accused the European Union Commission of Juncker of being complicit in abuses of rule of law which took place under Borisov. But I myself, maybe I can't so easily accuse just one party for wrongdoings, and I have the feeling both in Bulgaria there is no huge ambition or curiosity or desire to right now to move closer to Western Europe, let's say. And at the same time, maybe when one country or one side doesn't have great ambition, maybe the other side also doesn't have great ambition. And I can totally understand comparing to Romania why interest towards Bulgaria is smaller. One reason perhaps is that Bulgaria just doesn't have these natural resources which Romania has. So somehow naturally the stakes in Bulgaria for economically centered lobbies or groups in Western Europe are not so huge. Um, but of course, there are many other reasons why the relation is not so dynamic as, for example, I would like it to be. And uh, I can imagine that when one side is not having sufficient interest, also it is always reciprocated. And now I have the feeling we're entering again another era or period in which Boyko Borisov maybe will be somebody in the European face. I don't know. It looks like that. He's been continuously winning elections, even if no government is formed. And we also just saw that Germany signed this agreement with Serbia on the lithium exploitation in Serbia, which again seems to be certain kind of bet on or emphasis on economic relations as opposed to values, change, and abstract ideas with regards to our region. So really, it's a very complex issue. I wouldn't like to work with fixed understanding about what is Western Europe and what is Bulgaria. I think in any area there is this tendency which looks for change and looks for standards, if you wish, or looks for new experience, internationalization. But also there is at the same time a tendency in any of the regions that tries to base itself on the status quo, on security maybe, or on stability, and just money to flow, and then the people who are in the subordinate position just not to create a lot of trouble. So there is this understanding that maybe a good policeman is necessary for our region, and that's all. And these two understandings, one based on transformation and one based on maybe in constant competition. I'm not happy that um, the stability maybe once again comes, but maybe it also has good sides. And any idea has good sides, and maybe we just have to be very precise in our conclusions. So I don't want to accuse just one side, and I think there is progressive element in any side. I just hope that better times for transformation will come because we see really generations and generations of people in my region who become cynical, and I think this is not European to be cynical.
Oh, definitely it is not. And I could agree with you that you can't simply say that European Union kicked Bulgaria into abyss, or on the other hand, that Bulgaria didn't want to profit from its presence in the European Union, also in the field of values. Of course, there are European forces who stand for progress of all regions, including Bulgaria and Romania, as well as there are other that were very happy with Boyko Borisov rule. And let me just remind how the European People's Party did not react to the protests in Bulgaria in the first place, as they were actually happy with Borisov, who was an ally of the who was the part of the European People's Party, and they weren't really enthusiastic about the prospect of his government being overthrown by some young anti-corruption minded people. So indeed, the relationship is complex, and we could perhaps talk more on a different occasion. But now I'd like to look on another aspect of the relations between European Union and Bulgaria. With Bulgaria having not having a stable government, not having a stable governance, how the current relations between Brussels and Sofia can develop. And in your report from Radio Romania, you mentioned that there are not tensions but talks on the line. As for example, Bulgaria is trying to renegotiate certain parts of national recovery and resilience plans, including as vital sections as those concerning just transition of industrial areas. So my question is, what changes would the Bulgarian elites like to introduce into the agreement, and what are other issues that now matter in the relation between Bulgaria and the European Union?
Yes, there have been media reports, for example, in Dnevnik in June, that Bulgaria really would like to renegotiate some aspects of the National Plan for Recovery and Resilience, which are related to the green transition, and basically it wants um, to reduce the level of commitments it has to make to reduce certain indicators so that it could eventually perform what is necessary in the time that remains. A lot of time was lost, including because of this political crisis and inability to form a stable government. I am also aware that the Bulgarian European Commissioner Iliana Ivanova is has warned that there is real danger that Bulgaria doesn't receive the funds for the national from the National Plan for Recovery and Resilience because by now it should have already done the reforms which are required for 4 transactions for payments, but it has received only one payment, and it still has not made reform for the second one. And imagine if the there is a renegotiation of the plan for recovery and resilience, then further time will be lost in negotiation. And I also am aware that recently, a few days ago, there is still a statement by the European Commission that officially this renegotiation has not been asked for, but at the same time, we are aware of the, our media wrote that there have been some maybe unofficial discussions about doing that. Another issue which is important is that Bulgaria has been trying to go to enter in the eurozone, and we see that Bulgaria's accession to the eurozone, the date for accession has been continuously moved further into the future. It's because some of the criteria like inflation are not still respected. Um, but it makes a certain impression because expectations are being created that maybe even in 2024 or 25 we could have entered, and the date is moving further into the future. And I think that the difficulty of formation of government in Bulgaria are not helping in achieving this goal. Um, and maybe there could be even other problems which appear as a result of this lack of clear direction of the country. Um, Also, the foreign policy of Bulgaria maybe has some difficulties. So generally, there is, I even can quote Vesela Cherneva, who today gave an interview to the Bulgarian national radio, that it is expected that Bulgarian EU commissioner in the forthcoming European Commission will have a less important portfolio, which in a way is also a reflection of the Bulgarian ability to do lobby or Bulgaria's importance in the European Union right now. And these are my comments on why the maybe the Bulgarian commissioner will not be a really significant one.
Okay, I'd like to explore a bit more the issue of foreign policy, and I would like to ask, how does the chaos with forming the government influence Bulgaria's capacities to be active in the region? I know you are very fond and you are also involved on many levels in building bridges between Bulgaria and Romania, not on political but on human level. But now I would like to ask you, what are the relations going if Bulgaria is virtually ungovernable? And Romania is not the only neighbor or partner of Bulgaria with which Bulgaria should have ties in the region. So, what is going on, for instance, in the Bulgarian Greek relations? Or is Bulgaria having any substantial position on the Black Sea strategic situation? And how about the relations with Northern Macedonia, which has been strained for a lot of time?
Okay, I'll try to say something about any of these directions. First of all, regarding the bridges between Bulgaria and Romania, my impression from the last months and years is that maybe only the human bridges are possible, and even they are not so easy to make. But the human bridges at least depend basically on people's ability to connect and trust each other, while the infrastructural projects which have been announced, and they both countries have been having some bold ambitions to build more bridges between themselves on the Danube. These infrastructural projects are, in fact, there is only one which is now really undergoing some work, but it is still at the level of feasibility study, and it will last until 2026. This process of this study will be finished then, and I am also aware that the lack of government in Sofia is a certain obstacle from the Romanian point of view, because there is a desire that if something is signed with Bulgaria regarding the bridge to be signed with the normal government, which really represents clearly a political will, and it is clear who politically supports it. The Bulgarian state supports it. The in caretaker government, which now has been on, is not seen as sufficiently representative or having sufficient agency or how can I say strength or political will behind it. In other occasion, recently we had this the similar position by the Macedonian Prime Minister Christian Mitskuski. You know that maybe our listeners know that he was hard on the issues of uh, constitutional changes in Macedonia, in North Macedonian constitution. So Bulgarians are included as a constitutive people in this constitution, and these constitutional amendments are necessary for the process of negotiations with the EU to start. And recently, he said that even a few days ago, he said that he's ready to speak to the government in Sofia, but not with a caretaker government. He wants a real uh, standard government in Sofia to have it as a partner. And on Greece, I would say that maybe in the absence of clear political will, maybe the importance of military or security institutions grows. Um, because maybe our listeners also know that recently Romania, Bulgaria, and Greece signed this agreement for so-called military Schengen, which is basically an agreement that should ease the access of military equipment and troops between the three countries, allied NATO troops, of course, and also there is a lot of talk that new infrastructure will be built between Greece, Bulgaria, and Romania, so that both civil and military transport of anything is eased, and that will be built with EU money. So, on this regards, I would say the technocratic and security matters maybe they have their own subjectivity, and they maybe act even sometimes without the need for a party to be behind them and to support them. Something similar can be seen also in the Black Sea regarding the cooperation between Bulgaria, Romania, and Turkey. Recently a naval mission which cleans the Black Sea from mines started its activity. It was something which was agreed even under the previous government of Nikolai Denkov, but it is also a sign of a general tendency that security between the countries in the regions, especially NATO countries, uh, is more easy to do cooperation than, for example, other domains where the political will remains important, and also as I say, at the level of people, the need for connections is also important. But again, I think it's not easy to happen when there are no traditional ties and contacts between nations.
That's very interesting what you say about security organs and armies going on with cooperation despite the crisis, and how this factor of how the defense factor, the strategic factor, is having its own dynamic. This is also a topic which we might discuss later in another interview or even interview guest, as the Black Sea region has a crucial importance for security not only of southeastern Europe but of Europe as a whole. But in my final question, I would like to return to Bulgaria's internal policy and internal dynamism. And I would like to ask you, what do you expect to happen if Bulgarians are really going to vote for in another early election this year or next year? You mentioned in one of your publications that more new pro business and patriotic parties could rise. Bulgaria has already had one ultra patriotic party, the Revival Party, who also was quite successful in previous elections. So I would like to ask you, is Bulgaria turning to the sovereignist current just like a range of European countries turned in last European elections? And what new can a new pro-business party bring, since in fact every party in post-transition Bulgaria has been pro-business in this or other way?
Yes, maybe I need to say that whenever somebody accumulates certain social capital in Bulgaria, like being influencer on internet or making certain events, being popular in certain region, etc., uh, it it is often happens that whenever or often happens that he or she is integrated into the political system, and even it may turn out that even before starting making this social capital, the person or the organization has been somehow aligned with certain fragment or tendency in our political system. uh, some people who gathered social support before becoming official politicians seem to be somehow associated with the Socialist Party, not as a party but as a tendency, which is a little bit maybe more different. It's wider than the party itself, and others with Democratic Bulgaria, etc. And now I say that because recently there have been some projects which, for example, try to connect young people with the business or try to promote certain patriotic values in societies, and there has been a discussion that these projects are somehow viewed positively by President Radev, who is also recently having a lot of statements that the political system in Bulgaria is in a big crisis, and some people believe that he may wish to exploit in a way this crisis and to increase his political influence by supporting certain parties or I don't know, in some other way. Maybe we need to see. There is this hanging issue that there are constitutional reforms which limited his control over the caretaker governments. If these constitutional changes are stopped by the constitutional court, then maybe Radev would have also come back, could have also come back through the caretaker governments in the future. So there is this expectation which some political scientists create that maybe Radev would have a more important role in the forthcoming months in Bulgarian politics, and maybe that is also in line with a potential win of Trump in the White House. I need to remind that Radev appeared around the time of Trump's victory, and they somehow both have been relying on some way of patriotism, let's say, or some way of connection between army and business. So I'm very vague in my guess what will happen, uh, but these are some processes which maybe others also observe, and we need to follow what will happen. Um, in any case, we see more and more parties which are not real parties, which are maybe just one or two men show. Very strange parties appear in Bulgarian politics in recent times, even entered in parliament and immediately fall apart after entering the parliament, and everyone reports the others, and everyone has something notorious, some bad uh, compromise, as we say here, about the others. So uh, I'm not very hopeful about what will follow. But in any case, my guess is that whatever happens in the White House will be somehow reflected in Bulgarian politics. and we will have maybe if Trump comes, there certainly will be people who will try to play the role of conservatives or patriots or some people who are maybe also maybe libertarian in a way. So this large segment, ideological segment of ideas which American Republicans represent, they certainly will find some representation in Bulgaria too.
It is definitely not easy to be hopeful about Bulgaria's future, and I won't simply say we wait for a change for the better, because the change for the better in Bulgaria and even sorting out this current crisis on the very basic level, that is sorting a crisis so that Bulgaria has finally a government, is an extremely difficult and extremely complex task. And still, at the end of the interview, I would like to say that I wish all the best to these forces of Bulgaria that really stand for the change, and to these people of Bulgaria who really want their country to be a better, more livable place. Thank you, Vladimir, very much for being with me today. Thank you to everybody who follow Cross Border Talks and who listen to the interview. We are open to your questions, suggestions, comments. Use the comment section for that. And don't forget to subscribe to Cross Border Talks on the platforms that we are present on. Thank you very much again, and I wish you a good day.